whatever hard decision you have to make, it affects everyone. I see so many leaders now, they fail to make a hard decision because they're a good person and they don't want to affect the one person. But what they don't realize is that they're essentially affecting everyone else, right? Every decision you make, right or wrong, affects the whole. Yeah, let's go.
All right, next up on Bourbon in the Boardrooms, Brandon Denmon. Pour something good because our next guest spent 27 years turning around multi-site operations across U.S. and Canada. He's not only shy about telling you why most executives are running on fumes. Brandon is the founder of Peak Executive Solutions, where he helps small, mid-sized businesses get their vision, values, and culture actually pointed in the same direction. Before that, he built chops leading high-performing teams through kind of operational chaos that would make most of us reach for a second pour. His hot take for this episode is hustle culture and the work-from-home era did not make executives more productive, made them more burned out, less connected, and even more communication channels than ever. If you've ever felt busier and lonelier at this time, this conversation's for you. Off the clock, Brandon's out mountain biking, skiing, or rucking because apparently boardroom stamina and trail stamina come from the same place. He is fueled by faith, outdoors, and if you're buying East Coast oysters and a glass of Woodford Reserve, grab a pour and join us. This one's worth a seat at the table. Brandon, welcome to Bourbon in the Boardroom. How are you doing today, sir?
Yeah, doing great. Doing great. Thanks for having me, William. I appreciate it and look forward to the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So give us just a little bit kind of, what got you started and where you're going.
What got me started? So we're talking the journey to the boardroom, so to
Yes,
speak.
sir.
Is that?
That is it.
Well,
Man.
honestly, and I would say this for almost anybody, our journey to the boardroom starts way before that. And I like to tell the story. Honestly, I grew up here in DFW in Garland, more of a blue collar town, really is now. A lot of manufacturing and whatnot. But the story really started out even long before I ever went to work, and that is my folks got divorced. I was in about third grade, so I don't know how old you are in third grade, but you're young. I think 7, 8 years old, and it really, honestly, shaped who I was as a person for a bunch of reasons because I wasn't really sure what the heck was going on. But it gave me the opportunity to spend a lot of time with my grandparents because my mom had to go to work, that sort of thing. And my grandfather was a contractor, and he did remodels. He put roofs on houses, put floors, tile floors. And so I spent my youth really learning what it was about to work hard, to do what you said you were going to do, to show up with your tools and fix things when they were broken. And so consequently, when I got a little older in high school, I got jobs mostly in the manufacturing, industrial space. Think machine shops, cabinet shops, that sort of thing. And did I learn a lot. And the story I like to tell here is that what I really learned in those spaces, and this is in the mid '80s, so I'm aging myself here, was really not so much about manufacturing and industrial and doing things with my hands, although I did learn those things. What I learned a lot about was sort of bad bosses. And gosh, the prevailing wisdom around how you run a company and treat people was more straw boss mentality in those days. And modern day leadership hadn't quite hit the mainstream. It was do as I say kind of mentality. And I guess my senior year is probably my summer after my junior year. I went to work at a cabinet shop called Metro Store Fixtures. Metro Store, we made all the cabinets for a place called Things Remembered, which you may remember. It was in the malls. They did like engraving and stuff, and the Sunglass Hut Maybe that was the birth of my love for cool sunglasses. You can see my hat and sunglasses back there. You can almost never see me in public without a hat and sunglasses on. Still to this day. But anyway, what I learned there was a guy named Barry. He owned the place. I wish I remembered his last name right now. But Barry was different. Okay. I mean, when he walked the floor, which was every day, in this cabinet shop, people really sought him out and wanted to show him what they were working on. He knew who we were, even as high schoolers. He knew about our family, what was going on. And I thought, holy cow, this is a different kind of place to work. And I can see the joy people have working here, that they felt like they were part of something cool and bigger and perhaps important, even though we were just making what I called curio cabinets, which he didn't really like back in that day. And I told myself then, I was probably 17 years old or however old you are, and I said, I'm going to work here forever. This is my place, right? These are my people. And true to who he was, Barry sat me down one day as a young man and said, listen, Brandon, we like you here and you're welcome to stay, but I think you're cut out for more. So Barry didn't just, teach me more about, leadership. He taught me more about, leaning into others and their strengths. And so I thank him for, sending me on a different trajectory. I decided to take out some loans and go to college. Spent about 3 years in business school, I hated it, with a passion. And I didn't want to be an engineer, which was probably where my brain really should have taken me, because my dad was an engineer, and that just made you, maybe that made you a bad person or something, because that's why you get divorced or whatever my brain had decided, whatever story I was telling myself. So I ended up getting about 3 years worth of business school in, called my dad one day and said, I really hate this. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life if I get this degree. He said, I told you should have been an engineer. So, it was God ordained. I left the school I was at. I ended up at Texas Tech University, studying mechanical engineering. And, God has mysterious ways. I think the very first week I was at Tech, I met my wife. That was 33 years ago, or give or take, when we met. I got through engineering school. We got married. And this is where it sort of starts into the trajectory of the boardroom. So I ended up graduating and moving halfway across the country to North Carolina, going to work for a family-owned brick manufacturer named Eisenhower Brick and Tile. The owner there was a cool dude. His son was pro golfer. Like, a lot of cool things going on over there. And so I was there for a few minutes. And he comes to me one day, says, look, I know we just moved you and your new wife. By the way, Mary Elizabeth, my wife, she was pregnant this time, with our first, Colton. And, he said, we're going to sell the company, and, we've got a buyer. We're going to close pretty soon. And I'm like, holy crap, I'm in trouble. I'm 1,400 miles from home. I have no money. I thought this was going to be my place. But the truth is, again, in God's fashion, he shows up at just the right time. The company that bought us was called Boral, and they were out of Australia, and their idea was they were going to roll up the industry, because the building products industry was very fragmented in those days. A lot of family-owned businesses, a lot of distressed assets due to economy and other things, lack of capital, cost of capital. So I spent the better part of 27 years with that company doing M&A work, turnarounds. We bought a lot of distressed assets, built some new plants. And the important part of all that, going back to my friend Barry, who set me on this trajectory, was really creating a space where people felt like they were part of something bigger. And let's not pretend for a second that manufacturing brick or roof tile or stone, which is what we did. We had more than 40 plants across North America. Um, it was really about creating a space, a culture that drove execution in our business. And that's, going all the way back to my youngest days. That's what I think probably set me in line to be in the boardroom. I was the EVP of operations, the COO of that company, and through mergers and acquisitions, we ended up with some private equity in there, and we ended up exiting that business. This has been it'll be 5 years ago in October, and lots of lessons learned, mostly about living your values and creating something, where people can find their part of the story. And so I've talked a lot here, and I think there's something to be said about high performance and culture and living your values through those values-based habits that we created, in Boral and in Meridian, which it ended up being under the joint venture. So
Yeah, I mean,
that's kind of the journey.
it's funny that you start off with, a boss, right? Because you've probably had the bad bosses that kind of help enlighten you to things that you didn't want to do. And the good bosses, oftentimes they're that one that kind of feel has your back. And, Barry could have said, "Hey, stay here, stay here, stay here." And he basically looked at you and just said, I feel there's something different with you. I think you need to go, do as you want, but I think you should go explore that. And, speaking that into, he was probably what, 17, 18 at the time.
Yeah, at most.
At those times, most of the time, kids ain't listening to that. They're just like, oh, he's
Yeah.
just some old man, like, what does he really know, right? But you, sounds like you embrace that. So, what's your bad boss
Well,
story? What's that one that said, hell with that?
oh my gosh, there's so many. I mean, even in Boral, we worked through all the Harvard educated, know it all, 300-page strategic plan type folks, which wasn't always the MO. But I think, there's one thing that the bad bosses I had in common, and I won't call out one because there's probably too many to really call out. One in particular, I'll kind of explain what he did and how he treated people. And the main thing is he didn't necessarily live out the things that he said, right? The values that were on the wall weren't what were exhibited inside that business. And so I went to work there, and it was a building products company. We made brick. And his idea was for me to come in and integrate these businesses that they had bought. It was about 5 different businesses. They had a lot of capital. Again, another company out of Australia. Not all companies are created alike, but the leader of this company, he going back to the straw boss mentality, and this is way down the road. He said one thing and did the other, and you never really knew which version of him was going to show up. And so I knew by this point, I knew what I was willing to put up with, what my guardrails were. And so I think, the biggest thing about this is um, needing to feel like I was part of something bigger and that people had a say in the work they did. And then in how we deployed the capital, and it wasn't just one person makes all the decisions and everybody else executes. And in the end, I just said, "Look, man, I'm not your guy. This is not the kind of environment where people thrive. And if you just want a yes man, I've got some friends who are really smart, went to engineering school, were in the military, and they can follow orders very well. I'm glad to introduce them to you, but that's not how I operate, right?" For me, that it's the most pungent of the stories in my head. Although there were some instances that were certainly were some funny stories, probably even that I could tell. But I think that's, as an overarching theme, you want to give people some space, right? You got to be able to trust them. So you create that environment of trust, and then you give people, in a cliche way, enough rope to hang themselves, and then the cream rises to the top, as they say. But that's an easier way to see it than to have people talking behind your back and saying, "Man, this place sucks."
Yeah.
Um, I think creating a good space is challenging, especially if you know what to do or you think you know what to do and you're not a very good listener. Those kind of bosses are hard to be around, and
Yeah.
honestly, they end up with the leftover employees at some point because the good people are going to leave.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Um, I mean, it's almost where you get into a point where you're almost having to manage up, right? So
All the
I
time,
would, I used
100%.
to, I mean, I used to get my boss, I mean, epic butt tons of shit about me having to, I spend more time managing him than I did my guys. And it usually, trickled down to a pretty good conversation, but, that explained to him why. But I think oftentimes we miss that sometimes, trying to help manage expectations and you're that intermediary. What do you put into place to kind of help people understand that people have bad days, right? Your boss will have a bad day. And unfortunately, sometimes it rains down on you. But how do you put up that barrier to keep it from seeping through the cracks down into your team? How do you build that level out in your team? Is it just based on trust that if it does trickle down, come talk to me about it, we'll get this sorted out? Or what do you put something else in place?
Yeah. Yeah. This is a really broad topic that I think deserves a lot of thought. Um, what I see in businesses that do well when there's mayhem, when there's chaos, when there's things that, don't go well. And manufacturing's a hot seat, right? I call it being in the frying pan. Because if you can't take the heat, manufacturing's really not a good spot for you because something's going to happen every day. And the reaction of the boss, if it's consistent, you know what to expect. You can manage that, right? You can tell people like, hey, our messaging here needs to be clear that we've got a problem. We've also thought through a solution and to share that solution so that we don't get 100 different solutions that he demands we try, she demands we try. But I think it's that consistency, right? Knowing that somebody has your back, even if sometimes they're off the hook with their reaction. And I mean, I've got some bosses I think about in the past that literally did have that whole fly off the handle in their quiver, right?
Right.
And so it was my job to manage that reaction, but also to share with the people that we're gonna be okay, right? It like he's got a lot of pressure or she's got a lot of pressure from the board, from investors or whatever it is, and I think it's communication, William. It's making sure that you're communicating that while things aren't great right now, there is a plan. You're part of the plan, um, and we'll get through this together. People need to feel like you have their back, or at least you're aware of the tough things that sometimes they have to go through in the spaces I've worked in. And it probably goes with any business, right? I mean, bad stuff happens, right? Things are going to happen, especially if you're trying hard. A lot of people are trying new ideas. I think about it in today's terms, in terms of like AI and things where people are what I call pushing out the boat, trying to figure it out. The amount of mistakes and the amount of heartburn they're going to get out of that uh, is probably going to be a lot, but the good that's going to come out of it, if it's done right, could be astronomical in terms of cost savings, efficiency, or just a better product, better problem solving. So I think, if we can do a good job of communicating with our folks that things are going to be okay. Yeah, they're bad. Like I'm aware things are bad. Let's not pretend they're great, but we'll get through it together. Right? It's a team effort.
Yeah, absolutely. When you have bosses like that, it makes going to work a lot easier, right? Because at the end of the day, Brandon's got my back, even when things don't go right. You're not looking to point fingers. You're not looking to degrade anybody because, I mean, realist tells you that bad things will happen. It's just a matter of time. So I'm gonna change it
No,
up
it's
on you.
true.
Nope, go ahead.
No, that's fine.
I was just gonna say I'm gonna change it up a little bit. So I went with bourbon in the boardroom for a couple different reasons. One of the things I like bourbon, but to me that there's a lot of similarities, right? You've probably had some really good bourbons in your life, and you probably had some that you'd just rather use it as fire starter. But to me, that's a lot like the leadership in the boardroom, right? Like you got I guess to me, there's a little bit of an elegance about bourbon that people just kind of raise up. And then, of course, the boardroom, we always kind of feel like is a elevated spot. So you have any stories that kind of help you feel like those two tie in? And, I mean, like
Hmm.
me, it was drinking at work with the CIO because he knew I had a bottle in the desk, and it's the bottle that nobody talked about unless the day was really hard, and then it was just like, hey, you got that stuff in your desk still? Like, yes, I do. Go find a cup, but don't get the coffee cups because it will eat the wax off the cup.
That's funny. That's funny. So work stories that tie into the complexities of bourbon. Man, I should have thought about that in advance. I should have known you were going to ask me that, because if you asked what I was drinking, it'd probably be a beer or something. Maybe an IPA, right? Which is a little complex as well. Um, but yeah, I mean, let me think about this a little bit, William. So obviously, uh, when you go in, let's just talk about sitting in the boardroom as an executive team, right? You've got different flavors, different strengths sitting around the table together, right? And hopefully you
Yeah,
do. Not everybody's the same. We're not all drinking from the same bottle. We each have our own singularities, if you will, and what makes us who we are. And I think to me, that's the strength
yeah,
of a team, is that everybody brings their own bottle, if you want to say it that way, right? We bring our own internal problems, our own energy, our own strengths, whether it's tenacity or discernment, or even just galvanizing a team. You need those different flavors around the table to make something good. And maybe a blended bourbon is a good example, right? If you blend the right bourbons together and you age them in a cask together, and you start taking on the flavor of the barrel, right? And
right.
and I think maybe if I was going to compare it to the boardroom, that team is the barrel, right? And they put the flavor, the values, the culture into that bourbon, which is blended with different mixes that come from different backgrounds, different experience, different strengths, and clearly different weaknesses.
Yeah,
Uh,
I was
so
actually about to
I
make
don't know
that
if
same
that is
thing.
where you were going.
No, it's exactly so. For me, I'm kind of I really enjoy single barrels, right? It's just kind of my jam. But as I kind of ask the question, it kind of starts bubbling in my mind. I'm like, but to me, the boardroom is more like a mixed mash, right? Like it's never a sing because one, you never got there by yourself, right?
That's right.
If you're being honest with yourself, you did not get to the boardroom by yourself. I mean, you started off
No.
with a story of kind of who helped you, who that initial propulsion was from. Sometimes it's family, but when you have a really good boss that sees that in you, it helps you, understand your trajectory. And you kind of go into, you're calling the board, or excuse me, the people within the boardroom the barrel. I was thinking a little more along the lines of the boardroom is the barrel, and the people within it's the mixed mash of whiskeys that we're trying to build out a premium bourbon for that we're going to call the company, right? So
Yeah. The barrel's the culture of the company, I guess. Yeah, good way to put it.
So, I mean, you've worked in good cultures, you've worked in bad. When you're in a little bit not as good culture, how do you try to differentiate your culture for your team and kind of what I'm going to call your direct touches to try to help start bending that culture, right? Because you've hit on it several times that culture really is the piece that, one, it drives good employees. It drives people that want to stay working where they're at because they understand the why. Little Simon Sinek there for you, before
Yeah.
probably Simon Sinek wrote the book. You've hit on it several times. When everybody understands how they fit in this wheel, they're part of their cog, how it turns everything else, things tend to work better, right? So how do you try to, if you come into a bad culture, or M&A is where you kind of see it sometimes, it comes in with a purchase. How do you help try to rectify that or drive at least your part of the cogs to work well?
Yeah, what a good question. I mean, it's really a process, and I mean, I can tell you what I did. I can't tell you if it's right. I can tell you it worked in most cases. We were part of something bigger that we wanted people to feel like they were part of. And while we went through different leaders at times that had different ways of managing and governing different boards, one thing really stood true is that we were pretty clear on the direction the company was going, or what the end result needed to look like. And so let's just take a single plant, for example. Let's say we bought a plant. This is a real story that was struggling, right? They were struggling with people. Their process was challenging. They maybe had old equipment, and people didn't feel like there was any way they were ever going to succeed, either in safety, quality, getting the right customers, and staying working year round, right? Because it was a little bit of a cyclical business because of weather and other things, depending on where you were. And I think for me, the first step's always listening, right? Where are we at today? Assessing, like, who do we have on the team? What do they do? What do they know? What are their strengths? Perhaps what are their weaknesses? Um, and then how do we take what the overarching goal is and boil that down to something that we can truly understand and have impact over? And I think over time you build a narrative, right? A narrative within the plant that says, hey, these are our 3 to 5 things we're going to accomplish this year. And if you look at this is how it ties to the overall goals or direction of the company. So we've got something to do, and it's important because it's going to add to the overall success of the company. But we can't focus on the company per se, but we can focus on what we do in our part of the business. So really just boiling it down to each individual job, whether you're a supervisor or whether you're sweeping the floor, driving a bulldozer, running a machine, or inspecting for quality, what is my piece of this story that actually ends up creating the greater good? And so my sense in all that was always that if we can do that for these people, and be very clear that they're able to go home and tell their significant other, hey, I'm making a difference. And it doesn't really matter what they do, right? Whether they're sweeping the floor or driving a piece of heavy equipment, that's an important piece of what we did. And so, my mantra in the brick business was kind of centered around we're building the American dream, and every kid wants to live in a brick house because we've all heard of the big bad wolf, and if you don't have a brick house, it's gonna get blown down or tumbled by the storm. So think the analogy of building your house on solid rock, right? From a
Right.
Christian perspective. And so I think it creates a bigger picture of how we fit in the whole, and boiling that down to the very specific job that you do, right? Whether you're a plant manager, a supervisor, or somebody that works on the line, it's all very, very important.
Right.
And frankly, it all starts by good leadership, and it finishes by making sure everybody's, cliche as it is, pulling in the same direction,
Right.
or aligned behind a common goal.
Yeah. So you just touched on something I really feel like is probably where you draw a lot of your strength and a lot of your wisdom from, being, from Christian foundations. Um, I think oftentimes, well, that's a whole other episode of what I feel about kind of what's going on in that area. But, I always kind of say that, if you're a true believer, you have the absolute best leadership book that you've probably was given from an early age, with your name inscribed on it from your grandparents, with some of their favorite passages, and all you got to do is open up and read it. Trying times, good times, how do you celebrate the good times? um, but to me, I feel like you just touched on a little bit of tying it in, whether you're sweeping the floor, you're driving the truck, you're pushing the button to make the machine turn around. um, your leadership style is kind of drawing that back to them, right? Like, everybody's important. Nobody is really above one another. There are some of us that are
Yeah.
tasked with we'll call them higher grade decisions, but at the same time, everybody has a decision to come in and work their best that day. And how do you keep your Christian ties into your leadership with so many people? I mean, yes, you got the people that try to browbeat people to death, but you can also lead without necessarily leading that way. But I feel like you probably lead with a little bit of both. Not browbeating. It would be funny though. So, how do you how do you keep that servant leadership tied so far forward to help propel other leaders?
Man, what a good question. Well, I mean, as I probably have told you before, um, most of what I do is tied to my Christian beliefs. And as you said, if you go and read the New Testament, read it, 10 times, you'll get 10 different feelings, because it depends on where you're at in life. It just speaks truth and life into what we do. And I know not everybody reads the Bible and not everybody's a Christian. But I think overall, minus some, they would say that good Christian people are good to be around. They do the right things most of the time. They're not perfect, and they're willing to admit, "Hey, I'm not perfect. I don't do things right all the time. I make mistakes." Um, but there's a lot of passages in the Bible that just talk about that leveling of society. Right? Jesus didn't come only to save the people that were good and amazing, the Pharisees, the people that were the leaders. He came to save those that didn't know, right? And it goes on to say in the New Testament just about, a good leader will go to save the one and be really excited about saving the one, even more than the 99 that didn't go off the path. So I think as good leaders, if we can focus on some of those things and tie those into what we do and how we think about the people that we support, it goes a long way. In fact, I just finished a book. If you don't mind, I'm going to share,
Now, go
called The
for it.
Spiritual Art of Business. It's written by a guy named Barry Rowan, and he this guy was super successful from a worldly view, but also from a Christian view. I would say the companies he worked with and for and who he served uh, succeeded because of the way he folded his spirituality into business without making, those that weren't believers feel bad, but rather feel good. I'd be real surprised, and he's probably knows how many people came to Christ because of his leadership. So
Mm-hmm.
I think we're all sort of called to serve and to minister. And whether we have a church or a business we minister in, we still have a congregation, right? And that's kind of the way my mind thinks about that. It's like, well, what is my congregation? I wasn't called to be a Christian minister, but maybe I sort of was at the same time, just in a different way, through actions and words and belief and pushing people to be their very best at what they do and using the skills that God's given them. I think there's something just really powerful about being able to do that. And
Yeah.
when you see people flourish as a result, like, man, that's the payback. That's where it's all at.
Yeah, I agree.
At
I
least
think
for me.
sometimes, yeah, for me, it's the same, like when I've done something to give you the ability to grow and people reward you for that, it makes me feel like I'm on top of the world, right? Like when somebody else recognizes somebody else's ability to step out, but in my mind, it's because I help create the culture around them to know that if things go bad, and they will, I got your back, right? Like, so kind of based on that and tying some of this in, what is one decision that you feel a tough decision that you had to fire somebody, some tough decision that you had that either propelled somebody or,
Mm, okay. All right. I mean, there's a lot. Um, all right. I got two stories. I'm gonna start with this is a long time ago, William. So I'm gonna fumble a minute until it all starts to piece.
you're good, man.
But I had this kid that worked for me. Um, he was an hourly worker named Grant, and Grant really was a good operator and a good kid. Like I was probably a kid too, if I think about it now. But um, Grant had some issues. He was married. He had two kids. Great operator, but he just couldn't get to work on time. And we had this, attendance policy, and I think they called it a no fault attendance policy. Basically, you're late so many times or you miss so many days and you're automatically fired. There's no questions asked. So Grant had been late a few times. His boss comes to me and says, "Look, man, Grant's going to point out," that was what they called it. Uh, what are we going to do? Like, he's our best operator. So I'm like, man, we can't afford really to lose Grant. So I said, bring him over here. Let's just sit down with him and find out what the heck's going on. So Grant tells a story. His wife is doing crack or something, one of these drugs that really takes you down a bad place. He's got two young kids, and so whether she was good or not depended on whether he was going to have to figure out something for the kids for the day. We started work at 6 a.m. So you got to get up early to figure all this out. Is your wife going to be able to take care of the kids? Well, we didn't know this was going on, and we should have. It's a good lesson to learn there, knowing what's going on in people's lives and how do you figure that out? How do are you sitting down and understanding what people are dealing with? Because everybody's climbing a mountain, right? And all the mountains look a little bit different, but everybody's climbing one. And we're still all trying to get to the peak, but some people have a harder time. They got a broken leg or whatever, can't get there. So anyhow, when we found this out, I said, Grant, let us try to help you find something for the kids where that's consistent. And so at this I had two plants on this site, and right or wrong, I had two plant administrators. One did all the HR work, and the other one did all the finance stuff. And so my HR person, she helped him find a place. They got the kids somewhere. And man, he was literally not far from pointing out we got this sorted out. He was showing up to work on time. And then something happened. He went back and things got worse, I guess, with his spouse. And he pointed out. So he comes to my office. He says, "Look, can you give me another chance?" And I prayed about it a lot. I'm like, we kind of already gave you another chance. And so in the end, we let him go. I said, if somebody calls and asks, we'll tell them, you're a good employee, but you got to freaking show up on time because nobody can put up with that. Not in manufacturing, maybe in some other kind of job in this work from home society, maybe that would work better. This was 20 something years ago, 25 years ago, probably. So anyhow, the life goes on, right? I mean, we got issues every day. We got a new operator. Things were okay. But Grant comes back up there. He shows up one day, looks good, clean cut, which is weird for him. And he sits down with me. He says, "Look, I got to tell you, I got to thank you for letting me go." He said, "It really, honestly, it changed my life because I had to make some really hard decisions that ended up paying off. Great job that I love. They love me. It starts a little bit later, so I don't have to worry about being late to work." And so the outcome of that, sometimes you have to make a hard decision that feels bad in the moment, not just for you, but for the person, right? I mean, you're taking
Yeah.
away what is effectively their livelihood. But here's the thing. In the end, it was better for us because we had somebody that was going to show up on time. It's better for the rest of the employees that weren't like, "Hey, I wonder if Grant's coming in today."
Right.
And perhaps I shouldn't have used his real name. I doubt he'll listen to this. Um, or not. And frankly, it worked out better for him. So it was better for
Yeah.
the company, better for the rest of the people, and better for Grant. So the point is, whatever hard decision you have to make, it affects everyone, right? And I see so many leaders now, they fail to make a hard decision because they're a good person and they don't want to affect the one person. But what they don't realize is that they're essentially affecting everyone else, right? And
Right.
so every decision you make, right or wrong, affects the whole. And so I think if you look at it from that lens, um, making those hard decisions becomes a little bit more palatable, even though it's still hard.
Yeah, that's probably the hardest thing about leadership anyway, is making the decision that that needs to be made. But at the same time, the human factor creeps in a little bit, right? Like, man, like it may be I've been there before, I've been let go, or I may, whatever. But at the end of the day, you got to tally that one back up and say, well, if I wasn't let go, I wouldn't be here, or if this didn't happen, that game of what
Right.
if is a dangerous game, right?
It is. And that's exactly what happened with him, with Grant. I made some other decisions that didn't work out so good, but that's part of the game, if you will.
Yeah. So, what would you say your superpower is?
Hmm. Well, uh, I get this question sometimes, so I would say this, and I'm going to tell you where it comes from. But my superpower is reading the room, right? Getting the feeling of the room, feeling the emotions in the room, and kind of knowing if there's something underlying that's not being said. And I get that really going all the way back to when my folks got divorced. Like, you're going through a hard time, your senses, they rise up. And so in this case, I was always waiting for the next shoe to drop, right? What's the next crappy thing that's going to happen? And I need to be prepared for that because I certainly wasn't prepared for what happened in that day. And so I think I just carried it forward, right? I feel the room. I feel like I can almost walk into a room and tell you whether things are good or bad. I can't necessarily tell you exactly what it is. That'd be pretty cool.
Right.
That takes some work. But I can tell like something's not right, and we need to dig here. We need to go a little further and have some hard conversations. And that served me well, whether it was in the boardroom or coaching and leading an executive team now. I think it really helps.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because that, with executive, so Peak Executive Solutions is your business, right?
That's
And
right.
with
Yep.
that, I mean, that's got to be something that you've got to be able to really lean into and garner to make things happen faster. The faster we can identify a problem, the faster we can resolve the problem. I've noticed lately when I'm working through issues, people want to identify, you know, um, not really the problem. They're looking at some of the things that go wrong, but they're never, they stop at that, right? They never dig further to see if it's something bigger. How do you kind of help, especially because you're coming in from the outside, and sometimes the outside is he's going to call the baby ugly. We got to be prepared for it and listen. But you've always got that one that's like, man, my baby ain't ugly. Like, man, that's the ugliest damn baby I've ever seen. What are you talking about? Your baby ain't ugly. So how do you kind of balance that out of reading that room, finding that person that's probably going to be your bigger, I don't want to say obstacle, right? But maybe the mountain that you need to climb. That person that's, once you can win this person over, everybody else kind of falls in line.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes you don't win that person over. And that might be part of the issue, right? They may just not be a good fit. So we have a process we use, and, thinking about getting to root cause, right? Root cause analysis. And there's all kinds of problem solving tools out there, from Kepner Trigo to simple 5 whys problem solving to get to root cause. But ferreting out the real issue behind somebody that's a naysayer, or it's an always been that way kind of person, um, that's part of the challenge, right? And usually by the time they bring me in, um, the the senior leaders, the CEO or COO or maybe VP of finance, HR, they know there's an issue. They may not be able to figure out how to solve it without somebody to help facilitate the conversation. So I would say, the best thing to do is to ask questions, ask the right questions, to listen well, and to get them talking into what might be the real issue that they're dealing with there, whether it's people that don't want to come along for the journey, or they're just tired of change, or they're not prepared to change, right? They're scared. There's fear. And that might be because of the leader or in spite of the leader. But there's almost always some dysfunction in a business. And it comes down to how the leadership team a lot of times interacts. So teaching people to have hard conversations without it being the end of the world is one of the things we do, that I think really helps people get past that fear of sharing what they're thinking, right? And many times it comes down to the CEO. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's true. Um, and it's not that they don't think the baby's ugly. You got two schools of thought there, right? You have one that says this baby's always ugly. It always needs change. We've got to do this and that, a million different things to make it pretty, put more makeup on the pig, so to speak. And then you've got the other side who uh, really feels like there's nothing wrong. Why would we change? Those aren't the kind of people I want to help, right? And they generally won't bring you in anyway because they don't need any help, right? They're sort of
Right.
perfect. They're the Pharisees in the story we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. Nothing wrong here. Keep on walking. Nothing to see.
That's right. Do not pay attention to the man behind the curtain.
Yeah. Sometimes that curtain needs to be yanked down. So one of the things I forgot to touch on in your intro, and I apologize about that, but you're also a Vistage chair for, is it just the DFW area? How's that work?
Yeah. It's just in the local area, so it's a peer advisory group. We get together monthly to help solve some of life's biggest challenges. And the nice thing is, it's a safe environment. It's people from different industries, so there's no competing in there. But we share everything from personal issues, like if I don't change something, my wife's going to leave me or my husband's going to leave me, to I've got this business issue where I'm trying to create an ESOP and I don't know how to do it. I don't know who to hire. I don't know how to communicate this with my employees. How do I do that? And in that collective room, in that group of peers that have been through a few things, most of them more experienced than me, in a lot of cases, in a lot of ways, more educated, everything, certainly smarter. Facilitating those discussions is the power, right? That's the power in the room, and people walk away with real solutions that they wouldn't be able to ferret out otherwise. Because running a business is a bit like being in an echo chamber. And as a CEO, a lot of times you just see a lot of heads nodding in the boardroom, right? I agree with you, boss. And this is not what happens in these rooms. So when people want to grow their business, they want to make decisions faster and more accurately, and they want to have resources. Vistage has got 45,000 members worldwide. All of those are resources.
Yeah.
It's a great place for them to sit. It's a low cost, low investment way for businesses to regain that growth trajectory and to not do it alone, right? For it not to feel so lonely.
So on the Vistage, is it just typically, business owners, CEOs, or is it basically anybody at the executive level?
Great question. So the group I have that I'm building now is a CE group. So it's mostly business owners, CEOs, presidents, people that are running big divisions of a larger company, perhaps. But Vistage does also have key groups. So think you've got your VPs, your director level, that sit underneath the CEO that are direct reports. It's got a small business group. So this tends to be everything from almost solopreneurs or small business owners up to about $10 million in revenue. And then they've got a trusted advisor group, which is mostly people like me, perhaps like you, that have hung their shingle. They're growing a small business and it's service oriented or something like that, that's servicing some of the bigger companies. So there's really sort of, I'll call it 4 different groups, right? You've got your C-suite, your CE level, you've got your trusted advisors, you got your key group, and then you got your small business group.
Yeah. So comparing, we'll say Vistage Group to what you do with Peak Executive, with Vistage, those guys, they want to be there, right? They're not just, it's not something that they're just showing up to once or twice a year. I'm sure there's, I don't want to say attendance policies, but there's probably something similar to that. Plus, they're having to pay for that seat at the table. Whether it's, $500 a year or not, you're still paying for something. How do you kind of compare that to when you come in with Peak Executives, you're sitting with essentially a similar scenario, right? But you're within one company. I'm sure you probably learned a lot that you kind of throw out there when you're working with Peak to start the conversation. But where do you feel most people kind of fall as far as that goes? How do you use one to build the other?
Ah, great question. Well, that is one of the mechanisms I use to get my clients. As I do workshops within Vistage. So I go around to different Vistage groups and I'll run a couple of different workshops to help the business owners get a vision around why culture helps drive execution and how you build that culture, how you engineer it. And out of that, a lot of times people say, "Hey, is this something you can do for my team and me?" And so that's the genesis for getting these clients and getting them started on really. It's a journey, is what I would call it. Right? We start at the base of the mountain, using a metaphor of a mountain, trying to understand where are we at now. What are the things that we hold dear? Who are we? Why do we exist? What's the identity of the business? Where are we going? what makes us different, better, stronger, and what perhaps are the weaknesses. And then we build on that. What are the systems, the processes, the meetings? How do we communicate? How do we lead better? And at the top of the mountain, right, you work your way up the mountain in these systems and processes and get everybody aligned. There's some one-to-one coaching involved once you kind of get to that sort of peak, to keep it going, to keep the momentum going, to look off into the future. You get to the top of the mountain, you can see a lot, right? Um, and you can see a little bit further out in the future, but you still have issues you have to overcome. Some of that might be scaling back down a little bit before you scale the next mountain. So I think that's, more of a metaphorical way to explain what we do. And I'm creating something brand new right now, which is really an adventure based training, which is going to bring Peak Executive Solutions into more of an expedition style coaching methodology. And that's coming in starting in August, end August. So I'll
Awesome.
tell you more about that as things go on. So using that mountain as the picture,
Yeah.
we're going to start at base camp and do some adventure based learning, where people can tie actually doing something rather
Hmm.
than just sitting in a boardroom and learning. And I think that two pronged approach to learning is more sticky and perhaps more fun. It'll definitely be more fun for me because I'm pretty adventure based in the mindset that I have.
Well, I think a lot of times you got to think most of us do better about putting hands on than just reading a book, right? It's easy to read a book or, audio book. They got all kinds of stuff, right? But when you actually get to put, you know, pencil to paper, get put hands on things, see things in process, there's a lot of things that we kind of forget and quite honestly remember that we've enjoyed in our lives, right? It's
Yeah,
to me,
yeah. I mean, some of these trust based things are really powerful.
yeah. And you've hit on it a couple times, right? We always use the mountain thing, right? Because there's that thing about being on top. But the one thing that there are people that do. I don't want to say nobody does, but you've kind of talked about it just a second ago about the base and anything that we build. You've talked about being in homes and whatnot. You don't start building a house with a roof. You don't start climbing a mountain by getting somebody to hello pad you to the top, right, and say that you climbed it. You got to start at the base where the foundation is the strongest and work your way up, right? And I think that's something that we
Yeah,
overlook. I don't want to say overlook in leadership, but I think we forget to remind the people in our care that we got to start somewhere and let's build a good foundation and we can keep layering on top of it to grow. How do you feel that?
yeah,
I mean, you've talked a lot about it, so I know that you're sitting there building all kinds of mountains, whether it's in your Vistage group or you're working through Peak Executives. Um, do you have just like a platform, or not a platform, just a way that you really kind of get everybody to understand? Last one
yeah,
before we move
yeah. I
on, I
mean,
promise.
yeah, that's okay. That's all right. Yeah, I actually do have what I consider a roadmap, right? I mean, we all remember the old Rand McNally or before iPhone was able to connect to your car, and you never worried about how you were going to get there. You didn't have to open the maps go, or probably aging myself again there. But how do we create that roadmap? And it's really, when you're at the foundation or at the base camp, let's call it, letting people understand like that's where we're going, pointing to the mountaintop, but here's where we're at now. And let's be realistic, right? We're all at the beginning. We're at the base. And as the company begins to scale the mountain, you still end up with new people, right? So how do you take them through base camp and catch them up? And I think that's what we try to do at Peak Executive Solutions is really to help people get there faster, not just with the people they have, but with the people they're going to bring on later, right? So while it's a journey, you kind of have to catch people up, right? And so I've been really clear about who we are, why we do what we do, what's the point, is super powerful, and it improves the trajectory, the speed, the cost, the turnover in these businesses, because it's, those are painful things when you get them wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to move into a segment I like to call barrel proof. It's a lightning round. I'm going to ask you probably about 5 questions. Don't think about it. Just give me the best
Okay.
answer you got. All right.
Oh gosh, don't think about it. All right, I'll
Yeah.
try.
Just whatever the gut
This
is, right?
sounds
So
challenging. Okay.
now
All right,
it's
let's
really
go.
not. Hopefully it's fun. So we're pouring up a glass of whiskey. We pouring neat. We pouring on the rocks.
Rocks.
If you are pouring up a cocktail, what's your favorite cocktail?
Shoot. Good question. I'm trying not to think, but that's not helping. So how about ranch water?
There you go. All right. So you're hiring somebody. You hire the paper or the person?
Person.
Favorite place to go vacation?
Colorado.
Biking. Yeah. There you go.
I'm biking, skiing, hiking, you name it.
Last one. Favorite place to take your wife?
Cabo.
Cabo. Wife likes the sun and sand. Huh?
She likes the sand. I like the mountains. That's the facts.
That is true. I forget. So I had never been to Cabo. So
It's pretty good. It's pretty good. Good fishing, good food, good people, lots
yeah,
of sun. Pretty nice most of the year.
yeah.
It's desert. It's
I
where the
enjoy
desert meets the
Mexico.
beach.
So I went to Monterey a little bit earlier this year. It's kind of
Yeah.
in the middle. It was good. I mean, it's a good time. It's for work, but at the same time, you get to enjoy a little bit of it.
Yeah, for sure. Different culture.
So my last segment I like to call the final pour. This gives you the option to, or the ability to talk about whatever you feel like you want to talk about for something that you want to pitch. And the last thing is really just what's a piece of advice or some maybe aha moment that you would like to throw out there for people maybe that, helps them make their next decision.
Wow. Okay. Well, I shared a little bit earlier, William, that I'm starting a new program. It's going to be adventure based. Call it an expedition, if you will. Metaphorically, there will be some mountains involved. To think about, how do you get from the base camp through all of the challenges, over the rocks, through the rivers together, creating trust, communicating better, and reach that proverbial peak that you're shooting for, and then set off for the next peak. That's going to kick off late August with a trial base camp. So I'll be doing that here in DFW. I haven't quite set the venue yet, but I've got most everything put together, a workshop and some learning together. So we'll bring different business owners together, maybe even be something you want to participate in as we kick it off and try to understand how it's all going to play together, how it works, the cost structure and things, and how that's got to work. So I'm pretty fired up about that. That's going to be through Peak Executive Solutions. People can find me at peakexecutivesolutions.com. They can, I've got my speaking sheets out there. If somebody wanted to bring me in to run a workshop or a keynote, they can also call me at 951-818-4131. Find my YouTube channel, which is a little sparse right now. It's getting built back up at Brandon Denmon. And then my email address is bdenmon at Peak Executive Solutions. Probably you'll have that in the show notes. What can I tell somebody that they can walk away with? Let's see. How about we keep with the mountain theme? But first, I'd just say, in general, my view of the world is culture's what drives strategy to execution, right? Culture gets your strategy done. And I would just say this in sort of closing is I want you to keep climbing, and I'll see you at the summit.
I like that. I like that a lot, Brandon. First off, want to tell you how much I appreciate you being on here. The knowledge that you've shared, the stories. It's kind of what I want this to be, right? It's like I don't want it to necessarily be one particular thing. I don't want it to be the show that everybody turns in just for. I mean, if they just want to turn in for barrel proof, that's fine. It's kind of fun, but I really want to try to build something that allows people to learn something from somebody else, hear something that they probably heard 100 times, and maybe the 101st time's the precipice that sends them over to start taking action, right? Because a lot of the things that you talked about is not about ideas. It's about taking an idea and turning it into action.
Right.
And plus, when it comes to the peak executives, anything I can do to support you on that, please. You've got my contact info. Reach out. Let me know if there's anybody that you need to be connected to. I've actually got one connection I want to make for you, so I'll do that.
Perfect.
This afternoon. But
wonderful. Well,
yeah,
thanks for having me. It's great. It was a great conversation. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Brandon, until next time, we'll be signing off today, and I'll see you soon.
All right.